Hey, my name is Lucas Carter. I'm 28 years old and I work as a mechanical engineer in the suburbs of Boston, out in a quiet neighborhood where the houses are spaced just far enough apart that you don't hear your neighbors' arguments. My life has been pretty routine for the past year. Wake up at 6 a.m., grab coffee from the drive-thru on the way to the office, spend the day buried in blueprints and prototypes, then head home to an empty apartment. I cook simple meals, binge watch old sci-fi shows, and try not to think too much about how lonely it all feels. It's been almost a year since Sarah left. We dated for 3 years, thought we were heading towards something permanent, but she decided she wanted more excitement, more travel, more everything that wasn't me. I didn't fight it. What was the point? So I threw myself into work, figuring time would heal the rest. But lately, the silence in my apartment has started to echo a little too loudly. The weekends stretch out like empty highways, and I've caught myself scrolling through dating apps more than once, wondering if it's time to try again. That's how I ended up signing up for this blind date thing. It was through one of those apps that promises real connections without the filters. You match anonymously, chat a bit without photos, and if it clicks, you set up an in-person meet. No expectations, just a chance to see if sparks fly. I figured, why not? Worst case, it's an awkward evening and I go back to my routine. Best case, maybe I meet someone who gets it, who understands that life doesn't always need to be a grand adventure to be worth sharing. The date was set for a Friday night at my place. I chose home turf because it felt safer, more controlled. I spent the afternoon prepping like it was some kind of inspection. I vacuumed the living room, dusted the shelves lined with my engineering textbooks, and a few framed photos from college trips I barely remember. The kitchen got a thorough wipe down. I even scrubbed the stovetop that hadn't seen real action in months. I stocked up on snacks, a cheese platter from the local market, some crackers, olives, and a bottle of mid-range Cabernet Sauvignon that the guy at the liquor store recommended. Nothing over the top, but enough to show I put in effort. I showered, shaved, and stood in front of the mirror adjusting my shirt, a casual button-down over jeans trying to look put together without seeming like I was trying too hard. Just be yourself, I muttered to my reflection. If it's weird, it's only one night. As 7 p.m. approached, my heart started pounding a little harder. I paced the living room, checking my phone for any last-minute cancellations. The app had given me her name, Elise Turner, and a few basic details: 27, works in admin for a nonprofit, likes hiking and mystery novels. We'd chatted briefly about favorite books and weekend plans, nothing deep, but it felt promising. The doorbell rang right on time, a sharp buzz that cut through the quiet hum of my fridge. I took a deep breath, smoothed my shirt one last time, and walked to the door. I swung it open with what I hoped was a welcoming smile. There she was, standing under the porch light, a woman about 5 feet 4 inches with shoulder-length brown hair that framed her face, wearing a dark coat over what looked like jeans and a sweater. Her eyes were a striking blue, but they darted nervously, not meeting mine right away. She was pretty in a natural way. No heavy makeup, just a touch of something that highlighted her features. But something was off. Her posture was tense, shoulders hunched, and she kept glancing over her shoulder toward the street. "Hi, Elise. I'm Lucas," I said, stepping aside to invite her in. She hesitated for a split second, then leaned in close, too close for a first meeting, and whispered urgently, her voice barely above a breath, "There's someone following me." The words hit me like a cold splash of water. I froze, my brain scrambling to process. This wasn't the flirty greeting or awkward small talk I'd prepared for. Her eyes locked onto mine now, wide with genuine fear, and I could see her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her purse strap. I glanced past her into the darkening street. Sure enough, about a block away, there was a dark sedan parked under a street lamp, its headlights flickering off just as I looked. No one got out, but the engine hummed faintly like it was idling, waiting. My instincts kicked in. "Come inside," I said quickly, keeping my voice steady to not alarm her more. She slipped past me without another word, her coat brushing against my arm. I shut the door firmly behind her, flipping the deadbolt and peeking through the peephole to make sure no one was approaching. The street looked empty now, but that car was still there, a shadow in the twilight. Turning back to her, I saw she hadn't moved far into the hallway. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself, still in her coat, eyes scanning the room as if assessing escape routes. Are you okay? I asked, trying to sound calm. Do you want to sit down? I can get you some water or tea. She nodded slowly, her breathing shallow. Tea would be nice. Thank you. Her voice was soft with a slight tremor that made my chest tighten. I led her to the living room, gesturing to the couch. As I headed to the kitchen to boil water, I couldn't shake the unease. This was supposed to be a date, not whatever this was. But her fear felt real, not some dramatic ploy. I poured hot water over a chamomile tea bag, something soothing, and brought it back to her on a mug. Here, I said, handing it over. She took it with both hands as if drawing warmth from it. You're safe here. If there's really something going on, I can help. Or call someone if you want. She looked up at me then, really looked, her blue eyes searching my face for a long moment. There was vulnerability there, mixed with a flicker of relief. Thank you, she murmured, taking a sip. I didn't mean to bring this to your door. I saw the car again on my way here and I panicked. I sat in the armchair across from her, leaning forward slightly. It's okay, really. But if you want to talk about it, I'm listening. She hesitated, then nodded faintly. And in that moment, I realized this night wasn't going to be about casual chit-chat or seeing if we clicked romantically. It was already something deeper, something unexpected. The blind date had opened the door to a stranger's nightmare, and now I was part of it, whether I wanted to be or not. As the tea seemed to calm her a bit, I suggested we move to the dining area. I'd already set out the snacks on the small table in the living room. Nothing elaborate, just the cheese platter, some fresh bread, and a few grapes to make it look inviting. I figured we could eat while we talk, I said, trying to steer things back toward what this was supposed to be. A date. She nodded, following me over, but her movements were deliberate, like she was still calculating every step. We sat down, and I poured us both a glass of the Cabernet. To new beginnings, I offered, raising my glass lightly. It felt forced, but I was grasping for normalcy. She clinked hers against mine, managing a faint smile. Sure, to that. The wine was smooth, a little oaky, but it did little to ease the tension hanging in the air. I started with easy topics, the kind you'd expect on a blind date. So, the app said you like mystery novels. What's the last one that kept you up all night? I asked, slicing a piece of cheddar and passing it to her. Elise took a small bite, chewing slowly before answering. Probably The Silent Patient. It's about this woman who stops speaking after a trauma. The twists are intense. Her voice trailed off and she glanced toward the window again, where the curtains were drawn tight. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, but in here, it felt like the room was holding its breath. I nodded, sharing that I'd read it too, how the ending caught me off guard. What about movies? I'm a sucker for old sci-fi, stuff like Blade Runner or The Matrix, the kind that makes you question reality. She relaxed a fraction, her shoulders dropping slightly. I like those too. Inception is one of my favorites. The layers, the dreams within dreams. It's like how life can feel sometimes, you know? One wrong turn and everything unravels. There was a depth to her words, a hint of something personal, but she quickly shifted. What about you? Do you travel much? The app mentioned you like weekend getaways. I told her about a solo trip I'd taken to the White Mountains last fall. Hiking trails, camping under the stars, the crisp air that cleared my head after the breakup. It was peaceful, no distractions, just me and the trail. She listened, sipping her wine, and for a moment, it felt like we were connecting. But then her phone buzzed on the table, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. Her face paled instantly and she silenced it without checking, her hand shaking as she set it face down. The buzz happened again a minute later, then a third time. Each vibration seemed to chip away at her composure. Sorry, she muttered, her eyes flicking to the device like it was a live wire. I could see the strain now, the way her fingers gripped the stem of her glass too tightly, the subtle flinch with each alert. The meal dragged on like that, the food barely touched. The conversation sputtered. I'd ask about her job at the nonprofit, helping with community outreach, and she'd give short answers, but her mind was clearly elsewhere. Finally, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The air was thick with unspoken worry, and pretending otherwise felt wrong. "Elise," I said gently, setting down my fork. "I don't want to pry, but earlier at the door, you said someone was following you, and now with the phone, if something's going on, you can tell me. No pressure, but if you need help, I'm here." She looked at me, her blue eyes welling up, and for a second, I thought she might brush it off. But then she let out a shaky breath, her voice dropping low. "It's my ex. We broke up about 6 months ago. He was controlling, always checking my phone, questioning where I was. When I finally left, he didn't take it well. At first, it was just angry texts begging me to come back. Then it escalated, calls at odd hours showing up outside my work. Lately, he's been following me. I saw his car tonight on the way here. I reported it to the police a couple of weeks ago, but they said without concrete proof of a threat, there's not much they can do. Just block him, they told me, as if it's that simple." Her words hung there, heavy and raw. I felt a knot form in my stomach, anger at this guy I didn't even know, mixed with sympathy for her. I'd been through my own mess with Sarah, the lies and the slow unraveling, but nothing like this. "That's awful," I said, leaning in. "No one should have to deal with that. I'm sorry you're going through it." I paused, searching for the right thing to say. "Have you noticed anything specific lately? Like patterns in the calls or where he shows up?" She nodded, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "The texts are getting more aggressive. Things like, 'I know where you are,' or 'You can't hide forever.' And tonight, that car. It followed me from my apartment. I thought coming here would shake him, but now I'm scared he knows." Her phone buzzed again, and this time she picked it up, her face draining of color as she read the message. She turned the screen toward me briefly. A block number. "Nice house? Who's the guy?" I stood up, moving to the window and peering through a crack in the curtains. The street was dark, but that sedan was gone, or at least out of sight. "We need to be careful," I said, turning back to her. "I'll check all the locks again, make sure everything's secure." I went around the apartment, double-checking doors and windows, even flipping on the backyard light to scan the shadows. When I returned, she looked a little steadier, but exhaustion etched her features. As the evening wore on, the weight of it all settled in. "If you don't feel safe going home tonight," I offered, "you can stay here. The guest room's made up. Well, it's my office, but the couch pulls out. Or I can call you a cab and follow to make sure you get in okay." She met my eyes, tears glistening but not falling. "You'd do that? For someone you just met?" I shrugged, feeling the truth of it. I've had nights where I wished someone was there for me. "Yeah, I'd do that." After a long pause, she nodded. "Okay, I'll stay. Thank you, Lucas." That night, I set her up in the guest room with fresh sheets and a spare charger, then retreated to the living room sofa. Sleep didn't come easy. The creaks of the old house sounded louder than usual, and I kept one ear tuned for any unusual noise outside. But more than that, my mind raced with thoughts of her story, of how a simple date had pulled me into something real and raw. As dawn filtered through the curtains, I heard her stirring, and I knew this wasn't over yet. The morning after felt like a fragile truce with reality. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying her story over and over. But when I heard her footsteps on the stairs around 8 a.m., I put on a pot of coffee and scrambled some eggs, trying to make things feel as normal as possible. Elise came down looking a little more rested, her hair tied back, wearing the same clothes from last night. She thanked me for the breakfast, and we sat at the kitchen table talking about lighter things at first, how she got into her nonprofit work helping at-risk youth, how I'd always wanted to build something with my hands beyond just fixing machines at the office. It was the first real conversation where she opened up without the shadow of fear dominating every word. But that piece shattered when her phone buzzed on the counter. She picked it up casually at first, then her expression froze. "Oh God," she whispered, her hand covering her mouth. I leaned over and she tilted the screen toward me. It was a text from an unknown number. "Cozy night. I know where you crashed. Don't think you're safe." Attached was a blurry photo, my front door taken from across the street, time-stamped from last night around midnight. My stomach dropped. "He's been here," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. I stood up, pacing to the window and peering out. The street looked innocent in the daylight. Kids on bikes, a jogger passing by. But knowing he'd been that close made my skin crawl. Elise's face was ashen, her hands trembling, as she set the phone down like it was contaminated. How? How does he always know? She choked out, her voice breaking. I sat back down, taking her hand instinctively. It was cold, clammy. We need to figure this out. Has he ever had access to your car or phone recently, even briefly? She thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. A couple weeks ago, my phone went missing at work for an hour. I found it in my desk drawer later. Thought I'd just misplaced it. And my car? Sometimes it feels like things are moved around inside, but I chalked it up to paranoia. That was enough for me. As a mechanical engineer, I'm wired to solve problems systematically. Let's check your car, I suggested. If he's tracking you, there might be something physical. We grabbed our coats and headed to the garage where she'd parked last night. The space was dim, lit by a single bulb, and her compact SUV sat there innocently. I popped the hood first, scanning for anything obvious, then got on my back and slid under the chassis with a flashlight from my toolbox. It didn't take long. Tucked against the undercarriage, held by a strong magnet, was a small black device about the size of a matchbox. A GPS tracker. Got it, I called out, pulling it free. Elise knelt down, her eyes widening as I showed her. That's how he's been following you. It's a cheap model, probably bought online. No wonder the police dismissed it before. Without proof like this, it's just words. I photographed it from every angle with my phone, noting the serial number for good measure. She stared at it in my hand, then burst into tears, collapsing against the car door. He was always one step ahead. I feel so stupid for not seeing it. I helped her up, pulling her into a hug without thinking. It just felt right. She sobbed against my shoulder, her body shaking. You're not stupid, I murmured. He's the one who's sick. But now we have evidence. Real, tangible proof. We went back inside, and I convinced her to call the police again. This time, with the tracker and the new threatening text, they took it seriously. An officer came by within the hour, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Ramirez, who documented everything, bagged the device, and promised to run it for prints and trace the purchase. This changes things, she said. We'll put a watch on your locations and see if we can catch him in the act. I mentioned my friend from college, Mike, who's a state trooper down in Rhode Island. He owed me a favor from our dorm days. I called him right there, and he agreed to run the plate number if we spotted the sedan again. The rest of the day blurred into a haze of vigilance. We stayed inside, but twice I saw a dark car cruise slowly past the house. Same make as the one from last night. Elise paced the living room, jumping at every notification on her phone. To distract her, I shared more about my own past. How after Sarah left, I felt watched in a different way, like my own doubts were stalking me, keeping me from moving on. It's not the same as what you're going through, I admitted, but I get the exhaustion of it, the way it makes you question everything. She opened up too, detailing how her ex, his name was Derek, had started as charming but turned possessive, isolating her from friends, monitoring her every move. I thought leaving would end it, but it's like he's haunting me. As evening fell, the tension peaked when her phone rang from a private number. She didn't answer, but the voicemail that followed was chilling. His voice, low and menacing, "You can't hide with your new friend forever." I felt a surge of protectiveness I'd never known before. "We're not hiding," I said firmly. "We're fighting back." That night, with patrol cars making rounds outside, we sat together on the couch, her head eventually resting on my shoulder as exhaustion took over. In the quiet, she whispered, "Do you regret opening the door last night? Getting pulled into this mess?" I shook my head, meaning it. Not for a second. If I hadn't and something happened to you, I'd never forgive myself. Her hand found mine, squeezing gently, and in that touch, I felt the first real spark of something beyond sympathy, a connection forged in the fire of shared vulnerability. The days that followed blurred into a tense rhythm, one where safety felt like a borrowed thing. Elise decided to stay with me for a while longer. Her apartment was too exposed, she said, and the police recommended she not be alone until they had more leads on Derek. I didn't hesitate to agree. My place wasn't huge, but it had space, and honestly, having her there made the apartment feel less like a hollow shell. We fell into a routine that was part survival strategy, part unexpected companionship. I'd go to work during the day, checking in via text every hour or so, while she worked remotely from my living room, her laptop set up on the coffee table, surrounded by notes and mugs of half-finished tea. In the evenings, we'd share chores like we were roommates who'd known each other for years. I'd teach her basic self-defense tricks I'd picked up from an online course after my own rough patch, how to check a car's undercarriage quickly, or spot if a door had been tampered with. She'd laugh a little at my overprotectiveness, but I could see the gratitude in her eyes. In return, she'd cook. Simple things like pasta with fresh basil from the market or grilled cheese with tomato soup, her go-to comfort food. My mom used to make this when I was scared as a kid, she told me one night, sliding a plate across the table. We'd eat while watching old episodes of mystery shows, pausing to debate plot twists, and for brief moments, the outside world faded. But the fear never fully left. It lingered like a low hum, ready to spike at any moment. One afternoon, I came home early from a site visit to find her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone with a look of pure dread. "He sent this," she said, her voice barely audible as she handed it over. The message was from another blocked number. "I see you playing house. You think he can protect you? This ends when I say it does." Attached was a photo, my front steps, taken that morning while I'd been at work. The angle suggested he'd been right across the street, watching her come and go. I felt a rush of adrenaline, my hands clenching into fists. "That's it. We're calling Ramirez now." I dialed the detective's direct line, putting it on speaker as Elise paced the room. Ramirez arrived within 20 minutes, her notebook already open. "Show me everything," she said, and Elise did. Scrolling through the backlog of texts, the escalating threats, the photo that proved he was violating the temporary restraining order we'd filed after the GPS discovery. I added what I could. Descriptions of the car we'd seen, timestamps from my home security app that showed unusual motion alerts. Ramirez nodded grimly. "This is stalking, plain and simple. We'll ramp up patrols and trace the number. In the meantime, vary your routines. Don't go out alone." The stress peaked a few days later when we risked a quick run to the grocery store for supplies. We took my car thinking it might throw him off, but as we pulled onto the main road, I spotted the familiar dark sedan in the rearview mirror, tailing us at a distance. "Is that him?" Elise asked, her voice rising in panic as she twisted to look back. The car accelerated, closing the gap, and when I turned at a light, it followed, honking aggressively. My heart pounded as I wove through traffic, taking side streets I knew from my daily commute. Elise gripped the door handle, tears streaming down her face. "He's going to catch us," she sobbed. I reached over, squeezing her knee briefly. "Not today. Hold on." I managed to lose him by ducking into a crowded parking lot near a mall, pulling behind a delivery truck and killing the engine. We sat there in silence for what felt like hours, breathing hard until I was sure he was gone. Back home, with the doors locked and curtains drawn, the dam broke. It was raining outside, a steady downpour that mirrored the storm inside. Elise collapsed onto the couch, her body racked with sobs. Why won't he stop? I left him because I couldn't breathe, because every day felt like walking on eggshells. And now, this? I feel so weak, Lucas. Like I brought this on myself. I sat beside her, pulling her into my arms. She buried her face in my chest and I held her, rocking gently. "You're not weak," I whispered. "You've been fighting this alone for months, that's strength. And you're not alone anymore." As the rain hammered the windows, she looked up at me, her eyes red but searching. "You've been my anchor through this. I don't know what I'd do without you." In that vulnerable moment, with the world outside blurred by the storm, I leaned in. Our lips met softly, not in passion, but in a shared need for solace, a quiet affirmation that we weren't just surviving this together. We were finding something real amid the chaos. The kiss lingered, tender and unhurried, until she pulled back with a small, genuine smile. The first I'd seen without shadows. The police investigation deepened after that. Neighbors confirmed sightings of a man matching Derek's description lurking around, and with the new photo evidence and our statements, they issued a warrant. We waited, tense but united, as the net closed in. Each day brought us closer, our bond strengthening not despite the danger, but because of it. After nearly a month of living on edge, the breakthrough came on a crisp Tuesday morning. I was at work, buried in a CAD design for a new prototype, when Elise texted me, "They got him!" My heart skipped as I called her immediately. Detective Ramirez had pulled Derek over during a routine traffic stop, but when they ran his plates, the warrant popped. A search of his car turned up more damning evidence. Printouts of Elise's social media, a notebook with her daily routines scribbled in obsessive detail, even a duplicate key to her old apartment. He'd confessed under questioning, admitting to the stalking, the threats, all of it. It was over. Not with a dramatic chase or confrontation, but with paperwork and handcuffs in a police station parking lot. Elise was at the precinct when she called me later that afternoon, her voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. "He's in custody, bail denied. They're charging him with stalking, harassment, and violating the restraining order. Ramirez says with his priors, he'll likely do time." I could hear the tremor in her words, the weight lifting but leaving her unsteady. I left work early, picking up her favorite takeout from the Thai place down the street. Pad See Ew and spring rolls to celebrate, or at least to mark the end. When I got home, she was already there, sitting on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her, staring out the window at the falling leaves. We ate in comfortable silence at first, the food a small anchor in the normalcy we'd been craving. "I can finally breathe," she said eventually, setting down her fork. "But it feels strange. Like I've been running for so long, I don't know how to stop." I nodded, understanding more than I let on. The ordeal had pulled us together in ways I hadn't anticipated. Nights spent talking until dawn, her hand in mine during the scariest moments. That kiss in the rain that had shifted everything from protection to something deeper. "You don't have to figure it all out today," I replied. "Take it slow, you've earned that." Over the next few days, the pieces started falling into place. Elise got a permanent protective order, changed her phone number, and even switched to a new office branch in Cambridge for her nonprofit work. A fresh start without the constant looking over her shoulder. She spent hours with the therapist Ramirez recommended, unpacking the trauma that Derek had inflicted, and I encouraged her every step, even driving her to the first appointment when she was too nervous to go alone. In return, she helped me open up about my own scars. The way Sarah's leaving had left me doubting if I was enough for anyone. "You're more than enough," she'd say, her blue eyes steady on mine. "Look at what you've done for me." But as the immediate danger faded, so did the necessity of her staying. One evening, as we packed up the few things she'd brought over, a toothbrush, some clothes, a book she'd been reading, we both felt the shift. "I should head back to my place tomorrow," she said softly, folding a sweater. "It's time. But Lucas, I don't know how to thank you. You opened your door that night and you saved me. Not just from him, but from feeling like I had to face it all alone." I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the faint scent of her shampoo. "You saved me too, in a way. I was just existing before you showed up. Now, it feels like living again." We stood there for a long time, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the fridge. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes, but they weren't from fear this time. From something warmer, more hopeful. "This isn't goodbye," she whispered. "Let's do this right. Dinner next week? A real date, no shadows." I smiled, nodding. "I'd like that. A lot." The next morning, I helped her load her car, walking her out to the driveway. The street looked ordinary now, no lurking cars, just neighbors waving as they retrieved their mail. She kissed me goodbye, not a desperate one, but soft and promising. Then drove off, her taillights fading around the corner. I stood there for a minute, the cool air biting at my skin, feeling a strange mix of loss and lightness. In the weeks that followed, we saw each other often. Coffee runs turning into long walks along the Charles River, movie nights where we'd actually watch the film instead of glancing at doors. The bond we'd forged in crisis held strong in calmer waters, growing into something real, unhurried. Derek's trial loomed, but with him behind bars it felt distant, manageable. Elise testified when the time came, her voice steady, and I sat in the courtroom, proud of her strength. Years later, I still think back to that night. The doorbell, her whispered warning, the way one simple act of opening a door changed everything. We didn't end up together forever. Life pulled us in different directions eventually, her to a new job in New York, me deeper into my career. But we stayed friends, checking in with texts and calls, a quiet reminder of what we'd shared. And in those reflections, I realized peace isn't something that just arrives. It's what you build together, brick by brick, after the storm has passed. It's the hand you hold when the world feels too big, the trust you earn in the darkest hours. That night, I didn't just let her in. I let in the possibility that sometimes helping someone else heals you too.